Hello, everybody. This is the Mindfulway Podcast, and this episode is going to be a little bit different to our previous ones. This one is going to be about the creation of Mindfulway, the Mindfulway story. The idea came about for this episode when we talked about celebrating little wins and how it plays a part of an overall self-improvement journey. So we are also going to talk about how creating Mindfulway helped our self-improvement journey, what we learned from creating Mindfulway. So let's get into it, I guess, and start at the beginning. How we created Mindfulway, what was the original idea, what inspired us to do all of this?
Yeah, so we have touched on it in the previous episodes, one of the first ones. Mindfulway was born out of our philosophical chats between us as friends. What we have realized is that the kind of topics that we are discussing, like personal growth, like self-improvement, are topics that we can't discuss with most of the people around, with our friends, with our family, with people we recently have been meeting either. We've realized is that someone who focuses on growth mindset a lot is doing a lot of self-reflection and really working on themselves. Like those things compound after sufficient time passing, you realize that you're gradually distancing yourself from society. That was our shared experience, although our paths have been separate and different until we met. What brought us together was this frustration of not being able to self-improvement lengths with sufficient depth with most of the people around. And that's what we have enjoyed doing between the two of us.
What we wanted to share is the experience of becoming self-aware and working on yourself and having those little successes. I'm becoming better at this, becoming better at that. Not being able to talk to your friends about this or people close to you is frustrating because you want to discuss these things, but we are at different levels of self-awareness, and some people are just not interested, or maybe they are distracted. They just don't reflect enough, don't spend enough time on their own. Many people just think that that's what life is, being comfortable, having a job and doing what they do and not really thinking about what else is out there. Between the two of us, we've always known that there was something more out of life rather than just the everyday mundane.
Yeah, and I guess it's this extreme curiosity, I would say, where we're just so interested in understanding things, understanding how things work, understanding how our minds work, take a lot of interest in the topics like neuroscience, like psychology, like philosophy, and really trying to figure out, what makes people take certain decisions or take certain path in life, why so many people around us are unhappy, and why the two of us seem to have a pretty enjoyable life where we are optimists. We tend to see bright side of things. What makes us different? What sets us apart? And how the human mind really works. It stops people from just experiencing gratitude on a daily basis. Those things that we have learned throughout the experiences in our lives. Yeah? And we enjoyed talking about those things. And we realized that we can't really freely discuss that with most people we know, most people we are in touch with. And the principal reflection was that we have failed seeking people like that. We have found each other, right? And that really gave us the idea, maybe our discussions would attract other like-minded people. We can get to know others who are thinking similar to us, who are curious, who want to understand the deeper meaning of life is probably like a big thing to say, but just explore those personal growth more in depth.
Yeah. So I guess that was one of the reasons, is to connect with like-minded people. And the other one is to increase self-awareness. That was what prompted creating Mindfulway, is that our conversations and how enjoyable we thought they were. So we decided, why not record them? That's how the whole idea started. Let's record our phone calls, basically. And that turned into a newsletter and other things that we were working on, and an ebook, of course. But let's talk about early challenges. What does it take to start from scratch?
Yeah, I guess it's worth adding that when the idea of recording our conversations was born, we also immediately talked about how this would be a challenge for us to build some sort of business around it, because neither of us have run a business before. We have lots of experience, like professional experience in business, in engineering, in innovation, working for corporations and companies, but we have never done business of our own. A part of some side projects and stuff like that, but it wasn't like really a full-time business. And we thought, well, what a wonderful idea to dedicate ourselves to self-improvement and to sharing that message of self-improvement. How wonderful it is if we all become a little better than we were yesterday, and hopefully we can inspire others to explore this, just like somebody had inspired us in the past, right? All the people in our journey who inspired us. So yeah, the idea of making it a business and making products that people will use and find valuable was there from the beginning.
Yeah, and so why turning it into a business? What other reasons are there for it? And we talked about taking it seriously. If we're going to do this, we're going to go all in, right? It will give us focus, and it will enable us to measure how effective we are, and our earnings, I guess, is going to tell us how much of an impact we are making. And yeah, it's that's the other reason. Why, if we are doing something that we're passionate about, why not make a living out of it? So we set ourselves a minimum goal that what we are looking to achieve, and took on the challenge. When did we start? About a year and 3 months now. I think it was
I'm not
June.
counting. It's already a while.
I think it was June 2023 when we first said, "Oh, you know what? Why don't we record our conversations and then see?" And then we've gone pretty far since then. But we'll discuss our achievements, what we've achieved since then.
So yeah, I think it's quite interesting that from the beginning, like when this idea was born, it didn't take us long at all to decide that we are very excited about it. And the excitement is not really about starting it as a business. That's kind of secondary, and I think we can explain that. But the excitement was that we're going to do something that we have never done before. There is going to be a lot of learning, that there is going to be a lot of challenges to solve, and all these kind of new situations that we have never tried. And we both have this entrepreneurial mindset somewhere, but it had not surfaced far in our life. Yeah. So, like with taking any kind of bigger decisions, is okay, why just not try it? Let's get started and let's see where it takes us.
Definitely, there was a bit of fear of failure to overcome, but we thought, what do we have to lose? Why not start? And I think a lot of people have a hard time to make that step. We started with almost no investment whatsoever. We started with free software. We bought a $60 webcam, and that's it. So you really don't need much. I mean, you could probably tell from the quality of the recordings, especially the first episode. But also at the same time, we started something, we committed ourselves. So it was now part of our lives, right?
Yeah, there was the element of breaking the patterns that we are used to. Because working for companies, for corporations, if you have a new idea, you typically have to write it all down, make some sort of proposal, like really break it down to all the little elements to be able to communicate it and so on. And what we found here was that we can just get started with the first step, the absolute minimum that we need to do, and then start the journey and let's see where it takes us. That's why this idea of recording our conversation was like, we're having those conversations already anyway. Every week we are spending some hours talking to each other about philosophy, about our experiences, and it's always just like a free-flowing conversation. So why not offer that to others, right? One of these initial challenges, which is not a big challenge, was like, how do we actually call it? What should it be? Andras and Michał philosophical chats, or what's the name? And we are into design and into branding and so on. So yeah, we've had probably quite a long conversation actually initially. What would we call it?
Yeah, I don't think we thought about this that long. We thought about being mindful and living a mindful life, being mindful of yourself, of others, and that's kind of the philosophy, to live a life of self-improvement where you are mindful. And it can be associated with mindfulness, which is a bit more of a spiritual connotation. But we're completely okay with that. And so we went with the name Mindful Way
Yes, to
and
reflect the mindful way of living,
Mindful Way of
which
living.
we
Yeah.
are living, and which we think is a fantastic way to approach life.
Yes. So yeah, we thought that name kind of reflects our philosophy the best, and so we started with that. And what other consideration? What were the initial thoughts we had to think about when starting this business? Competition. What is the self-help industry is like? Where do we fit in? What is our message? How do we get attention? What are the problems we're solving? So there were a lot of questions we needed to answer while we were in the process of starting out.
Yeah, after we chosen the name, we started talking about those various aspects of, okay, let's think about 2-3 years in the future where mindful way could be. This is where, yeah, those questions about competition, about really fighting for attention, because in the end we are very conscious that in the self-help industry there are a lot of creators, right? There are those people who write books, who are very well known, who have podcasts with huge followings. And then there are those life coaches who also are at it for a long time. So we know that we need to find something different and something that appeals to people in a unique way. And for sure, like our biggest differentiation is the two of us, because we are two unique people. Our conversations are different to anybody's. And this is the initial differentiation for us. But then thinking into the future, we're also considering how can we do things differently, because one of the things that is very important to us is not to just copy and repeat what everybody else is doing. So like this thinking outside the box has been important in our lives, and we also want to demonstrate that through how mindful way evolves.
Yeah, and we also did a little digging into the self-help industry and realized that it's full of generic advice. And our biggest challenge throughout our self-improvement journey, we agreed that it was applying that knowledge. So
Yes.
the personalization aspect of it, because there is lots of knowledge out there. You can find YouTube videos, you can buy all the books you want on self-improvement. It will give you general advice or a story from the author, but it won't tell you how to apply that to your circumstances and your lives. So we thought that Mindful Way could be the entity that kind of inspires people and encourages people to actually apply that knowledge. And we're in the process of building tools that will let people do that. So have
It's a secret.
Oh, it's a secret, yeah. So if you have an idea or you read a book or saw a video and then you thought, well, I'm going to do this, but how? So we're building tools to allow you to apply, because I think that's where self-improvement kind of fails people, or self-help industry fails people, is to help them apply. Because reading a book is just not enough. You need to be able to, put that into practice and action.
It's just super difficult starting new things, trying new things. This is the biggest challenge, because anything we hear on podcasts or read in books, it all seems like a good idea when we hear it. But then actually changing ourselves, changing our lives, that's difficult. Yes, we are running the same programming as we've done yesterday. So hearing a new piece of information very rarely is transformational in a way that we actually do something with it. Some people it might be easier for them to do it, but for most of us, and certainly for the two of us, it is not easy to just hear an idea once and go and do it. There is a lot of consideration to that, and we want to make the ideas more doable for people. So, but more on that separately.
Yeah.
I think let's go back to Mindful Way, because, okay, it's all great that we found a name that we like, that we can identify ourselves with. So, but what Mindful Way really stands for? And I said that we had like a longer discussion on mindful, and I think that's where the discussion really was, because self-improvement is such a broad topic. I mean, you can get better at so many different areas of your life. Where do we focus? How do we find a niche? Do we go after something that is particularly important to us? And we quickly realized that no, we want to take the holistic approach, because that's how the two of us are looking at it. It is very much applying a certain way of thinking, a certain approach to all areas of life. And of course, you can't work on everything all at once, but the desire to be better in every possible way is like core to Mindful Way. So we've been talking a lot about how can we communicate why Mindful Way exists. So this is about what is Mindful Way's mission. So do you want to talk more about this, Andrzej?
Yeah, our mission is to increase self-awareness, which is the foundation of self-improvement, but also to talk about self-improvement as a lifestyle rather than, the occasional project that you do. Because I think that's what people's mindset is. We are kind of task oriented. People are, I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to work on this certain area, and if I fail, I'll abandon it, or I'll come back to it later. I'll do something else. But self improvement is more of a life philosophy. So you improve not on everything all at once, but it's a continuous process, and not in a way like many people do. For example, when you decide to go to the gym for the first time, you're going to get into it. You're going to go 5 times a week. You're going to, decide that you're going to commit to it, and you basically overdo it. And then after 2 weeks, you end up quitting because you're not enjoying it, and that's because you've overdone it. It's a step-by-step process, and it's the same with self-improvement, isn't it? It's doing little things, noticing little successes. If you go to the gym, nothing's going to happen overnight or in 2 weeks. So don't expect results right away. And that's the same thing with self improvement. It's a long process throughout your life. And then what you need to look out for is those little successes that you achieve on the way, right? So
Yeah,
that's our philosophy.
what we concluded is that the key to this is self-awareness. And our big frustration with people around us is when we try to explore these kind of topics with them, it's just they aren't interested because their self-awareness is just not at a sufficient level. And I'm sure that those who are listening can relate to that too. When you meet somebody who is pretty self-aware, you immediately can connect on this kind of self-improvement topics. And this led to making Mindful Way's mission increasing humanity's self-awareness. And that's what we're going to work towards. And this is going to be done through promoting this lifestyle that Andres just talked about.
Yeah, then we had to decide who is the target audience for Mindful Way, right? Because you can't talk to everyone and have everyone love what you do. So we had to pick who is the best audience for us is basically ourselves. So we were looking at people like us who are curious, determined, they are ready to struggle, give up some comforts for progress, right? And they have desire to grow. So who we want to target is 25 to 50 age group, right? Because we realize when you're younger, you don't put as much effort into self-reflection or self-awareness, and then there might be biological reasons for that. Emotional intelligence is not there yet. So but we can see that from our data, advertising data as well, that our ideal age group is sort of like the 30s.
Yeah, exactly. So we think, okay, anyone younger than 25 is probably not ready for this kind of bigger way of thinking about self-improvement. And then people who are more than 50 rarely would be ready to embrace like this kind of change in their mindsets either. So we are looking at 25 to 50, the transformational period. Anywhere in that period, people can embrace the mindful way of living.
Exactly. And this is, again, the same thing that we experienced ourselves, because both of us in our early 20s, we didn't think about these things, right? It came
Yeah,
later
exactly.
in
So
our 30s.
I'm 39 now, by the way. I know I don't look
How old? 29?
39.
Yeah, me too. Same age.
So we are the same age.
Yes.
Actually, our birthday is on the same date. So same date, same age.
Yeah. Yeah. A few years in between, but not, it's the same day. Yeah. So yeah, let's
Yeah, but
talk.
age is like it's secondary actually, because
It's
really
just a
what
number.
matters is the growth mindset. Yeah, so we are looking to address people who have growth mindset, who want to grow their mindsets as they move through life, and people who see every experience, every project, every life event as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to reflect, to increase their self-awareness, and to adopt the kind of lifestyle where self-improvement is central.
Coming back to age is all about perception, isn't it? because it's all about how you think of yourself as, being in your 40s or 30s or 50s, whatever. It's all in your head, really. It's just a number. So let's move on to development and how we started growing Mindfulway. So I think, what was first, the newsletter or the podcast? I think the
But the
podcast.
podcast is first, and
Yeah.
then after, because we have gone like without any scripts, and we actually picked a topic for the first episode using AI for self improvement. Because, to what I said earlier, like we were looking at how we can differentiate ourselves, how we can do something that others don't do. So we thought, oh, there are a lot of people interested in AI on X or Twitter. So we pick this AI subject and see, okay, hopefully that is going to attract somebody's attention, right? So, but then we have not managed to cover everything we wanted to talk about because it was non-scripted. So we said, hey, what about this? What about that? Post-recording. Okay, how about we put these things in a newsletter?
Yes, we still see potential in AI and how it can help people improve themselves. But it was a topic that is very, maybe too niche, right? A little
Yeah.
bit, a very small segment of people interested in AI and self development as well. So maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. But that's the whole thing about this process starting out, is that you try and you then switch direction, iterate, and do something else, something better. So the whole process of working on a project is a lot about agility and how quickly you can change and reflect on things like that. So yeah, podcast came from the idea of recording our talks and our phone conversations. But then we talked about, how many people are into podcasts. Maybe some people are into newsletters. So then we came up with the idea to accompany the podcast episode with a newsletter that gives a bit of an additional value to the podcast. So it gives a little bit more insight in terms of backing up what we are talking about with science, provide references to studies and research. And so that's how they complement each other. The podcast is more of a free flowing conversation. The newsletter is a bit more structured, there's a bit more information in there, a bit more science. So yeah, that's what we decided to go with.
Either one can be standalone or they can one support each other depending on what our listeners and readers want to learn and what format they prefer. But that's something that we are doing right now, and well, who knows what's going to be in the future, because those things are evolving and we are experimenting right now.
Yeah. And so again, we faced the challenge of doing something completely new because we've never written newsletters before, we've never recorded podcasts before, but we thought, if others do it, why can't we? If others can learn it, we can learn it too. So it's just stepping out of your comfort zone. I've never sat in front of a camera before, never talked publicly before, apart from maybe giving your presentation at work. But we decided to, just to have fun. I mean, what do we have to lose, right? So yeah.
There was a fair amount of self-reflection after recording a couple of first episodes, because the second episode, I think, was it about minimalism, wasn't it? As minimalism is something that we both have in common in terms of
Yeah, and
playing an important part in our life, so we wanted to share that.
and we created a GPT, right? Byless. So I think that's what
Yeah,
it
that
came
was
from,
kind
the
of, yes,
idea.
following on from the AI theme from the first episode, and then we talked about minimalism, and we said, hey, how about we learn how to use this AI stuff, right? So we went on studying ChatGPT and saying, okay, well, a lot of people won't know how to use it, so let's learn it ourselves and let's create a tool that helps people decide against purchases that they don't need or declutter their life, right? So it is still actually available, and we have some people using it every now and then. But one thing we have learned early on after this first couple of episodes is that even though we said, hey, let's just record our conversations and who cares if anyone watches it or not, we quickly found ourselves saying, hey, at least one person watches it, right? So we actually have set some expectations internally, subconsciously. And again, it's quite interesting how human mind works, that you say that you do it without much expectations, but then there are some hidden expectations popping up later in the process. Yeah, so we were laughing quite a lot when we we discovered that we both had a little bit of expectation, even though we know that that's not the right approach.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really want to make a YouTube career out of this, so we just used YouTube to upload the video, right? But some people have been watching it, so we might be doing something right. I don't know. And it's up on Spotify and Apple Cast, and yeah, well, we started it. We're going to stick with it, and wherever it takes us. But I'm sure it will take us far because everybody would start somewhere, right? Nobody starts with 100,000 followers right away. So to be in the top 1% of podcasters, we need 20 episodes, and we are now at episode 7. So we are nearly 1/3 of the way there. So yeah, it's an interesting journey, and that's also an aspect of finding your purpose. Is that it kind of keeps you excited and motivated to do something. And because we've learned that there's no overnight success, we have adjusted our expectations to that. We know that this will take a few years, and it's a slow process to build a community on X and find our tribe on X, but it is happening. We can see it from the numbers. We have more followers each day, more conversations with similar minded people on self improvement on X as well. Our engagement is growing. It's slow, but it is growing. But that's the story of everyone who's successful on X, right?
Yeah, and also it's not our focus, right? Like you just said, we don't have an aspiration of being big podcasters or having, you know, a million or 100,000 of subscribers to our newsletter, not at all. But we do need a platform to connect with our audience, and you know, just posting on social media feels like it lacks, yeah, because it is less personal, only in text, yeah. So talking and like showing our human side to people, it's something we want to do. But the biggest gain, especially up until now, where we are on this journey for the foreseeable future, it's our personal growth, because we are improving from episode to episode, from newsletter to newsletter. I can see how your writing, Andros, is getting better and better every time this newsletter comes out. We are getting gradually better setup for recording the podcasts, and we are focusing on making it a learning journey for ourselves. And people
Yeah.
will eventually come along, and it will resonate with some people, but it will also coincide with us getting better at delivering the message, and really identifying, you know, what is that core message really, because it is, you know, finding our voice. I guess it's something that we can only identify as we put it to action. You know, we can theorize and think about plans for the future like all we want. Really, it's all happening like right here, right now, when we are recording the podcast, when we are producing content out there, and we are creating value for our target audience. And continuously doing that, we are going to start that attention.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the next segment, the lessons we learned throughout starting our journey. Because you know, a lot of people might consider doing, you know, starting their own passion project or getting out there like we did. So what we listed 5 lessons here that we learned we think are the most important ones, right? The first one is there's nothing that cannot be learned. Just look at all the successful people. They started somewhere. They needed to learn. So, and if someone else can learn it, you can learn it too, right?
And that's okay. We
Yeah.
don't need to be perfect. We don't need to be perfectly comfortable in front of the camera or writing content. We don't have to have a perfect setup. And it's actually, it makes for a better story, right? Because we see this improvement as we're going along, and we know that as we continue that in the future, we're just going to be much better than in the past.
Exactly. If you look at any successful, for example, YouTubers' first videos, it's the same thing. They started with the mobile phone and crappy audio and crappy video. So, but you all start somewhere anyway. Yeah. The second one was to have realistic expectations, because if you put unrealistic expectations to yourself, then it will discourage you from continuing on. And to continue on, what you need is consistency, which is the third lesson we learned, is do a little every day. If you, even if it's just an hour every day, just get into the habit of doing your project every day. dedicate some time to it. And then don't forget to enjoy the process, because sometimes it does feel like work, but then go for the walk and come back to it later, right? It does, we get frustrated, right? Lately, you've been frustrated with coding. I've been frustrated with software and lack of customer service, right? I'm not going to mention the company. And I think the final point is to celebrate little wins, because we tend to forget to reflect on our journey and look at what we've achieved. And like I said, this is how this episode, the idea for this episode came about, is we looked at, okay, we've achieved so much in the last year. Have we actually stopped and think about all the things we've done, all the things we've created? So we started listing out our milestones and realized that a lot of people get lost in the daily grind and not actually appreciate the progress they made.
Yeah, it's quite interesting the polarity between those things, because in one way we say, okay, don't have unrealistic expectations, but on the other hand, go to dream big, right? Because otherwise, why do you do it? Like, Mindfulway is not here to connect with 20, 30, 50 people and make difference in their lives. We have an ambition to make difference at scale. So we are looking at, in the long term, having a big impact, but at the same time not having unrealistic expectations that it's not going to happen fast. It's going to take a lot of work. And this is where I guess the most important thing here is to focus on enjoying it, balancing this enjoyment out with the frustrations that are going to be there. You can't avoid it. But I like this Pareto principle, 80-20. So 80% enjoy, choose the things to do that we enjoy. And 20%, okay, there's going to be difficulties, let's push through them and so on, yeah? And then do it consistently. So all of these things are interacting. There is polarity all between them. There is a bit of frustration, yes, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller. But in the end, like, we know why we're doing it. It's important to us, and we enjoy it.
Yeah. So talking about us, how does starting Mindful Way benefits our personal self-improvement? So what have we learned personally from going through this process? And again, we have 5 points listed out. So time management. I think we're both really bad at managing time, right? But I can say that I'm getting better at dedicating time slots in the day to certain tasks. I'm not completely there yet, but I'm getting better at it. So I think it helped me in terms of time management and focus. So knowing what to do. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's, in terms of time management, it's certainly about being better at choosing what to work on and what to spend this time on. In terms of, and we often have those conversations when we have our regular calls. What will make the biggest impact? What is the one thing that we can focus on now that will take us that next step further? Yeah? Because, working on stuff that is secondary, that is a nice to have, I feel bad after doing it, because I just feel like, well, I've put in this work, but so what? Nothing came out of it. So prioritization, yes, for sure. Doing it's quite different doing it for Mindful Way compared to like my corporate experience, because it's different working on something that your boss had asked for, that you're doing because you're getting paid, and different when you're doing something that that the faster you do it, the faster you can make a positive change in the world. So the stakes seem higher, more emotionally connected, and it just makes you manage your time better, and that's my experience.
And also, starting a project like this gives you the habit to be consistent in something, do something every day. And that also kind of affects other areas of life, right? Because if you can be consistent with this, then I can be consistent with something else. I can be consistent in reading, or I can be consistent in walking or exercising, or eating better, because now that you're motivated to doing your own project, like you said, to make an impact and not just for a paycheck. Now you've proven yourself that you're able to be consistent. So
Yeah,
yeah.
patience for sure, because being patient with outcomes and impatient with action. I think it's a pretty obvious thing, right? Like this, we have a lot of urgency to act, and we are very keen to move forward. But what we learned is being patient with the outcomes, because the amount of work we're putting in is not like, it's always like, if you work for an employer and you put a lot of work, you always expect to be paid more, you expect the pay rise, right? It always seems like, well, the work that I'm putting in is not worth the money I'm being paid. And here is similar, although we are not getting paid, it's like, yeah, the results that we could be getting, we are not getting them. So patience is important, and it's just like such a practical lesson to learn.
Yeah. Our payment at the moment, or the little successes that we have, right? That's what we are working for. And
And the
so
occasional sale of our ebook.
the occasional sale of our ebook, yeah. And of course, feedback that we get from people that we come across on Axe, and people who read our ebook, we generally get positive feedback. So that's our payment at the moment. And so, talking about gratification and success, what are the major milestones we've achieved in the year that we've started Mindfulway?
I think the most rewarding for me is learning all these new skills that I didn't have before. So, we already touched on some of them, on podcasting, on newsletters, which is mostly your work, right? I just give some feedback. Social media, on coding, programming as well, because of the applications that we are not going to talk a lot about now, but that's coming. That's been a big learning. Right now, a little bit in the shadow, but we are going to start talking about this more soon. So yeah, learning new things is just exciting.
Yeah, and so that was one of them, is to learn new things, to learn on the go, right? Because a lot of people make I don't know if it's a mistake, but maybe it's not the right way around, is when you take a course for something that you were going to do in the future, right? It's much better, in our experience at least, it's much better to learn while doing it, right? It sticks better, because then you're instantly applying your knowledge as well. So the other milestone was starting a community on Axe, and starting to talk to people who are part of the self-improvement community, right? Engaging with them, and getting our message across, which is increasing self-awareness, and meeting some amazing people. So yeah, that's another good one. And of course, the ebook. We've written an ebook that is now for sale, and then people have been buying it, and we've been getting really good feedback on it. So that was months of work we've not done before in our lives, right? We never written a book before, but that was something we decided to do, and why not, right? We learned it.
Yeah, we're probably gonna do a separate episode on ebook, but I will expand on it in the future. But I want to just mention this personal story, where the reaction from my mom finding out that we actually published a book, and showing her this book, and been actually sitting with her until 3 o'clock in the morning, and bearing in mind that she's 70 years old, she was just so excited and so curious, and wanted me to translate the gist of every chapter. And we had just this awesome discussion about things that her and I have not been talking about before. And just her pride in her son writing a book was something I have not expected, because yes, it costed us a few months of work to put this book together, for sure, but we see that as not a core thing we do. We are unlikely to write future books. The idea for the ebook was to share our philosophy, and provide people with a glimpse of approach to life, and make it useful, and create value, right? Because this is all about how can we incrementally create value through Mindfulway, so that it compounds, and at some point it is just irresistible, and people won't be able to refuse joining it.
Yeah, but your mom's reaction was a perfect reminder of looking at our journey, and looking at milestones, and really appreciate the journey we've been on, and what we've achieved, because not everybody writes an ebook, so we need to be mindful of celebrating our successes.
Yes, and of course there are like lots of things that are, let's say, associated with something like ebook. For example, like, okay, so we made it a product, so we had to figure out how do we sell it, what are the platforms that we can use, the software solutions that we can use, how do we create this frictionless experience, how do we test it. Like when we launched it, we were like, okay, there isn't any purchases coming, like what's going on. We sent the links to our friends, like you would think some of our friends would actually buy it, but we realized that we have not tested sufficiently. We have not cleared the cache from our browser, and we ended up like completely switching the sales platform that we used. So learning those auxiliary things that are to do with creating a product, like that was another like great experience, and we now know the way. So for every next product we create, we now know how to do it. Yeah? And of course there's going to be other hiccups and problems, but loads of learning.
Yeah, excellent. So we can, I guess, conclude that starting something like this is not only beneficial in terms of business, but also beneficial to you as an individual, to your self development, to becoming better with time management, becoming more consistent, persistent, and resilient and agile, and that all that will reflect in your life because you learn these skills as you go along. You experience this through the process of starting your project. So I guess let's look at the key learnings. What are the learnings that our listeners can take away from this podcast? Because we talked about a lot of things, right? We talked about starting Mindfulway, talked about the lessons we learned, how it applies to our self-improvement. But what are the actual lessons that we can give to our listeners?
So let me start with one that's quite important for me. The big lesson for me here is that when you find something that you're passionate about, like for us, it's self-improvement, self-awareness, it's critical who you're doing it with. And this journey so far is amazing for me, thanks to you, Andras, because I
I'm
have
glad
not
glad to hear that. Thank you.
I have not thought much about when we were starting, like, oh my God, like he's going to be working with this guy, right? Like we knew each other working on a project, but it was much more limited scope. And also it was a project to make money and not a project that I just carry in my heart. And when you care so much about something, it's super important who you do it with. Yeah? So I'm glad to be on the journey with you, and I'm hoping we're gonna meet more people like us. Clearly, now we have proven on a sample of one that is possible. So yeah, an important thing to communicate here is like if you do something you're passionate about, don't do it alone, do it with someone, but find somebody whose values match with yours and somebody who cares about what you care about as much as you do.
Yeah,
I know very difficult to do. We are maybe just lucky.
but
That's an important observation.
if you search amongst people who share the same interests and the same passions as you are more likely to find that person. But that's not to say that someone cannot start something by themselves, right? Because there are a lot of creators out there who put a lot of value out. And we recently met someone in a self-improvement community who's amazing, and then she's got her own story, and maybe we'll do an episode, Spaces episode on X with her, or invite her to the podcast.
Shout out to Laura.
Yeah, hi Laura. Um, yeah, so it's nothing wrong with starting by yourself, but if you find someone who shares your values and not just in it for the money, then even better, because how many ideas we've come up with just by talking to each other and sort of like inspiring each other on coming up with new ideas, for example. But my story is what, a year and a half ago, I didn't know what to do. I didn't have purpose. And when once we started this up, this suddenly became the purpose.
It's
Because
quite interesting that like self-improvement has been part of our life, but we've always treated it as just something normal, something you just do, and we do, and others don't do, right? And that's probably an important insight. Something that is your purpose, you're probably already doing it, but you just see it as something that is a part of you, and you don't
yeah,
emphasize on it. And talk to people who are like you and look inwards and see, well, that part of my life, maybe that's something that makes me different, and maybe that's something that can be useful to others. Like we tend to try to find some new external thing to do, but that's not who we are, and it's rarely that we're going to change in a process of doing something new. Doing something that is already part of us and making it more of a focus has worked for us.
yeah. All we did was kind of realize that we've spent hours on the phone talking about self-improvement. It's like, and then what, this is something we were both passionate about. Why not start something? And then this is how it all started and developed into this mission, basically. So yeah, if you find yourself lost or not having a purpose, which is where I was a year and a half ago, we worked on that project, which didn't work out. And then I moved to a new town, had the same job, and I asked myself the question, okay, what's next? Where do I go from here? And then having you as a friend and having our conversations led to me finding my purpose. So there you
I'm
go.
glad. That makes me very happy.
There you go.
We have that for sure. We have that in common, and I think it's just we both realized in our conversations that that's probably something we want to do. And when it comes to success, it's like, how successful are we? And in this 1 hour that we've been telling the story of Mindfulway and the story of Mindfulway so far, there is just tons of success. And it's important to not look at success as financial terms, like, that's the kind of paradigm that the society associates with success. But success is so much on a personal level. Success is so much on who you're spending time with. Like the two of us spend so much time together because of working on Mindfulway, and the people we are networking with because of our focus now on self-improvement. I consider that a huge success and a big part of my life now. Yeah, so things can change a lot. Have your own definition of success, right? Learning new things, learning new skills, learning to write, learning to code. Those things are success in themselves. Yeah, and there are tools that are going to, yes, down the line, going to have financial results. But success is not that. Success is how you define it.
Exactly. Perfect way to end the episode, right? Yeah, we've talked about a lot, but I think there's a lot of value in today's episode, and hopefully people will take this on board, and we'll inspire some people to start out their own thing, just to create their own purpose in life. Our journey is proof that you can do it. If we can do it, you can do it, right?
If anyone is curious about any particular topics we've covered or any aspects of anything, like, we are available, talk to us. Like, we are, as you see from this episode, we are very happy to share our experiences. We can tell more stories, like, to you even privately if you like. So we would also like to hear your stories, and are they similar, are they different? Like, what are you wrestling with? How important is self-improvement to you? Where on the self-improvement journey you are now? And really, any feedback on what we do would be much appreciated too.
Yeah, every story helps someone. So if you share your story, someone else will hear it, and maybe it will change their lives. So thanks for being with us, and if you made it this far in this episode, well done. And please consider to subscribe to our newsletter. Join us on X, join a community and a conversation about self-improvement. And there is a lot more to come from us on X and in other ways in terms of self-improvement tools. Yeah, check out our website, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
Buy our ebook, The Self-Improvement Equation, www.mindfulway.life/equation.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. See you in the next
Bye.
episode. Bye.